Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the Shiny Developer Series. I am so happy you joined us. My name is Eric Nance, and we're going to get to our interview shortly. But I wanted to preface it by saying that when I started this developer series, there were definitely a few different focuses I wanted to highlight. And one of those is being able to use Shiny to solve real problems in business, whether it's in any industry that can take advantage of having dynamic web-based applications that are powered by R. And so today we're going to have a great chat with Yoni Sidi, who, like me, was an early adopter of Shiny, and he found some really interesting ways to bring usefulness to his businesses that he's worked for with using Shiny to really solve complex problems. We're going to hear about his tales of getting started with Shiny in the banking industry and some of the awesome innovations he's worked on and being in life sciences, which actually I'm a part of as well. So let's not wait any longer. Let's get started with our interview with Yoni Sidi. Very good, very good. Well, let's dive into this, shall we? So welcome everybody to our another installment of the Shiny Developer Series. I am thrilled to be joined by somebody I met at RCDOconf quite a few years ago, it seems like now. We hit it off quite well, talking about Shiny and R and all the fun things we've been doing with that in our industry work and in our open source projects. So it's my pleasure to welcome Yoni Sidi to the Shiny Developer Series. Yoni, how are you doing today?
Hi, how are you? I'm good, thanks.
Good. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I have quite a few things I'd like to cover. So first, maybe you could give our audience a bit of background about yourself and how you discovered R, and then Shiny from there.
Sure. So I'm a statistician by training. I'm from Israel, actually, and went to the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Got my PhD in stats, and my journey moved me to the U.S., where I worked for 4 years at Metrum Research Group. It's a small pharma consulting company in Connecticut. And now I transferred to Sage Therapeutics, where I'm going to do modeling and simulation. My background actually started in SAS and in MATLAB in college. R wasn't quite there yet for everyone, and all the instructors knew SAS and MATLAB, so that's what you learned.
I've been there. I have lots of stories about that one in my stat lab days in grad school.
Yep, yep. Printing out the log was quite the adventure.
Oh, was it ever? Yes.
So while I was at university, I actually was a research assistant at the central bank there, the Bank of Israel,
Mm-hmm.
where we did all kinds of small stuff with economics and stuff like that. And a lot of it was MATLAB based, a lot of Stata, which is another fun program
Oh,
that
yes.
we used. You're familiar with that one?
Yep. Yep. The hard way.
The hard way. Yep. Yep. And while I was actually waiting for a rotating license for MATLAB to come around, my turn to actually do some work, I was told it's going to take a few months to get a
Wow.
MATLAB license. So I wasn't keen on waiting too long, and I'm not too good at Stata to do everything in Excel and Stata. So I was one of the ones who later turns out was a bad thing. I backdoored R into the central bank.
Well,
I'm, I'm one of those.
there could be worse things to backdoor in a bank. I'll just say that. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you picked the right thing.
Yep. So me and a few others started to use R in the bank, and um, and slowly and surely it caught on with all the other users. Um, but that was my first real foray into R, transferring stuff from Stata and SAS and MATLAB to the new language, and learning how to download a package and install it and stuff like that. This is back in 2010. So
Wow. Yeah, I won't say how much I have you beat there, but I used it a little bit beforehand. I'm an old timer here, but yeah, it
Yeah,
was a different world back then with
yeah,
how you could get started with R for sure.
yeah, yeah. Over time, though, there were enough users in the bank across beyond the research department that we had a problem that because there's such a strong firewall for all the regulatory institutes
Hmm.
that we didn't have access to CRAN,
Yes.
which kind of makes it hard to use R.
It's one like the backbone of everything almost. So,
Yeah. So because I was the one who actually brought it in, the IT department said I had to find a way to if I wanted to continue using it, I had to find a way to bring CRAN inside of it, inside the bank. So
oh,
we basically mirrored CRAN like in the old way, putting it on a hard disk and bringing it in.
wow, that's intense, but kudos to you for going that far.
Yeah, yeah. So that was an experience that was a fun one.
I can
Um,
imagine.
yeah. So Shiny actually was also something in the bank that we brought in a few years later. Um, we we started to. I was working in the finance department in the
Hmm.
research area, um, testing out if banks are going to fail, which is always fun.
Oh, yes.
Actually, my job was to try and fail the banks on the computer. So
Well, better you than someone else,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So um, a way to try and communicate and also to track the real-time flow of data that we were seeing in stocks and bonds was to create a dashboard. Now, I think that was probably my first dashboard that I went through, and that was 2015ish, something like that. So Shiny was still pretty new, I think,
Right.
at that stage. So that was an experience of trying to understand how Shiny works and trying to pipe it in and explain to non R or non visual people
Hmm.
what they're seeing and how it interacts. So the first thing that my boss asked after we prototyped it was, I need you to take a screenshot of everything that you just did and hand me a booklet of that. It's like
Oh
that's not
boy.
it's not gonna work.
No, no. Unfortunately, I've had situations where we had testers of an app I built do that very thing with their PC, take screenshots, send me a Word document of all the screenshots attached inside. And I'm thinking there's got to be a better way.
Yeah. Yep. So that was interesting. But that was actually that app was before cross filter, but that was the basic idea of it,
Oh,
that
neat.
you could manipulate across different tabs and it would affect the whole app all the time.
Hmm.
So, and filter on plots and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool to play around with. And then um, after that, we moved to the States. My wife did a graduate degree at UConn.
Hmm.
So we moved to the States. And after that, I did a few apps, I think on my own before I got the ggedit. Um, we did an app that read in from Google Docs back in 2016, 15,
Hmm.
um, uh, and updated an app in real time for elections.
Oh, wow.
So this is actually a precursor to ggedit, which is kind of neat. So it was my first time using Shiny Apps IO also.
Hmm.
So back then it was, I think, predominantly free because they wanted people to use it.
Yeah, they had
Yep.
the free tier and they were, yeah, trying
Yep.
to push it out. Yep, yep.
Yep. So I got enough users to test it, to use that app. I put it on Shiny Apps IO, and you can kind of navigate around all the different polls and create your own coalition, and the app would simulate the outcome. So you can kind of
Wow.
compare the simulation and the observed outcomes of the elections.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that it was getting towards the right thing, because I would be getting angry emails that the app was giving them results that didn't make sense to them.
Yeah,
So I thought, okay, so I'm
you,
getting in user interactions now.
yeah, you're starting to see the biases sometimes
Yeah,
come in when they think they know what should happen, and
yep,
your app is being pretty objective, I would say, and telling them
yep,
something else. They don't like the truth or the analytics sometimes. Yeah.
yep, yep. But
Cool.
yeah, I got enough traffic though that it was just the time where Shiny Apps IO was switched from free tier, uh, a larger memory of free tier that you were allowed, and it was just changed a bit, and I had to start to pay, and that was the first time that I wrote an email to Tarif at our
Oh,
studio.
wow. You went big time there. Yeah.
Well, back, I think Tarif answered me, but I wrote an email saying that it's not fair that it was free up till now. And he was really nice. It was my first interaction with Tarif. He was super nice.
That's so
I really
cool.
enjoyed him. And so I did that Shiny app, and then I actually met Tal Galili. You know who that is?
Oh,
He's
yes. Yeah. Author of
our
our bloggers.
bloggers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So he's also based in Israel. So we became friends through R and R users and stuff like that.
That's
So
so cool.
his one of his main projects in his PhD was the heatmaply package.
Yes. I'm familiar with that. Yep.
Yeah. So we collaborated on doing a Shiny app for that.
Cool.
So that was neat to work with him. He's a good friend. And
Yeah, it's nice. It sounds pretty organic how you started growing into the community and through both your work projects, and then you started making connections.
yep,
Um, Certainly, it sounds like you were probably a frequent visitor to the Shiny mailing list. That was where I started to get to know certain people too. And I would see, obviously, Joe Cheng was active there, and Tarif was active there about the Shiny Apps IO side of things. So it's really cool that you're able to get involved with some of that. So yeah, maybe you could transition a bit and tell us. I was joking with you in the pre-show that I had attended your lightning talk a few years ago at our Studio Conf about ggedit, and I remember I was just mesmerized by what was possible in this, what seemed like this really small yet extremely powerful gadget. Maybe you could tell our listeners what was the motivation for creating ggedit, and what were some of the tricks you had to do as a Shiny kind of package author to make all that happen.
sure. So the ggedit, it's a package that lets you edit the aesthetics of a plot that you already built. So a lot of times there's apps that would you would have to go from soup to nuts inside the app,
Yeah.
which the UI can get a bit cluttered, or you have to bring in data and all sorts of things. And I wanted a way to, if I already had a plot, or I was given a plot by someone else while I was working, or to a client, I wanted a way to edit that plot.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the origination of it, because we were making an app that was, you'll appreciate this, tables, lists, and figures.
Oh, the acronym of anybody in life sciences has varied opinions on that acronym, but yes, I know
Yep,
all about
yep,
that.
yep. So we were making, when I joined Metron, they were making already an application that basically let you do a full report for modeling and simulation and pharmacokinetic report
Mm-hmm.
um, from what their main software is non-mem.
Sure.
So the output from non-mem, you want to create a visual predictive check and all of that stuff, and the app basically would take you through the whole report process and make it templated, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you would get the full R, all of the R script to recreate your report at the end of it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So at the middle of that, a lot of stuff that we innovated in there was that was before Shiny modules, stuff like that.
Yep.
So we basically had to manually do the whole environment, all the NS stuff that we take for granted today.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's an undertaking of great, I don't know how to say it, but I've tried that before modules. I fell flat on my face on it, so I'm sure you guys were a bit more successful than I was when I first tried
It
that.
it took me a while to understand that there was a guy at Metro that brought the original idea. He's
Mhm.
great. And and part of the problem was that each plot was done, it wasn't a static template. So whatever you asked, the UI was created. So
Mhm.
um, now it's insert UI, but it was before
Yep.
insert UI. Uh,
Yep.
so um, uh, so we didn't want to actually create all the infrastructure for the UI to
Mhm.
manipulate plots. That was the main problem.
I see.
How how do you how do you let the user manipulate all the aesthetics without actually building it in for them
Mhm.
for every single plot? So any report can have a lot of different types of plots
Right.
with different groupings, colors, facets, stuff like that. So you can't really plan ahead for it. So that's where ggedit kind of came in and said, we're not going to plan ahead for you. we're we're going to let a package understand the plot that you created and reverse engineer it and then build the UI from there and just do it with code and then allow you to edit whatever you want aesthetically wise for that plot.
Mhm.
So that was the motivation for it. Um, Another motivation was actually harping back to my research assistant days where I would endlessly edit plots in Excel.
Oh, the pains I've been through on that. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put those days behind me where I edit if a triangle is becoming a circle or not, or what color it is. So
Yeah.
that was another big motivation. So the idea was how do we empower the user to edit those without needing another person?
Yeah, exactly. Putting them in control and then being flexible enough to give them enough to customize without making it too daunting at the same time. Because as you're, I'm sure you're aware, there's like anything with ggplot 2, you can edit just about any aspect of that plot. So I'm sure you had to be a little more, diligent on, okay, what parts are worth editing. Maybe other parts that you say, well, we're gonna kind of have our hands off on that, because I know that's a difficult line to draw sometimes. Sometimes
Yeah,
you have users who want to customize every single thing. And it's almost like they're a graphic designer. Then you have others just like, I just want to change the color of one thing in the legend and I'm done with it. So trying to find that balance, I know, can be a bit tricky.
yep, yeah. And over time, the with Joe and creating shiny modules and
Hmm.
Winston creating shiny modules, ggedit got a lot of makeovers over time.
I bet.
Uh, and it became more lean and efficient. And also the um, ggplot itself, introducing rlang and things like
Yes.
that. So a lot of the things that we used to use, like the underscore eight, what was it, underscore str? That
Yeah,
was
yeah, right,
that it.
right. Hmm.
So that was a major undertaking to rip out all of that and replace it with rlang.
Ooh, right. Yeah, I've dived into the Erlang world a bit, and yeah, legacy code going to that's a bit painful. So I know that can be tough.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, that was yeah, that was a fun project.
Yeah, I do remember when it came out, I experimented a little bit. And then when modules came out, that's when I was like, hey, wait a minute, this is like everything I wanted because I can just fold ggedit into my existing app. And I think when you did make that update to make it a little more module friendly, I jumped on it right there. So I know I had at least one app, maybe two, that used it to do the finer features of the plot. And that way I didn't have my team or people that were users of my app give me angry emails about, I don't like that color. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Now I give them away to choose all that. So it's
Yep.
certainly been a helpful package. And I hope that, yeah, you continue development of it because I think it's a very important package in this space for sure.
Yeah, the one of the ideas that was batted around that I'll pick up at some point is trying to make there's some apps that as I said, you start from data until the end of the plot,
Right.
and usually those apps are limited to a layer or two maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when time when time permits, which never happens,
Of
uh,
course.
um, trying to create a GG layer type of thing in Shiny, where instead of creating a module that basically recreates a geom,
Oh, interesting.
and then you can just pop in a new, like add a new layer.
Mm-hmm.
So then a Shiny app, you can create as many layers as you want, as complex as you want, and they're all independent of each other. And then behind the scenes, they're adding layers to the same base plot.
That sounds fun. Yeah, I'm probably not easy either, but certainly I hope, yeah, when you do get a spare moment, that sounds like a great feature to have for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, it's clear to me that you and I have similar paths. We were both early adopters of Shiny, and I think you probably had a. Seems like you were able to venture in deeper territory than I was in the very beginning. Where I'll be honest, when I first started with Shiny, the first, well, I should say, when I was in grad school, the only web type interface I ever built was like one of these PHP interfaces with a MySQL backend. So Shiny was giving me all these new tools to create interesting UIs. And I know one thing I've had to learn along the way is it's not just about throwing a bunch of inputs on it and overwhelming your user with all these different options and not having a clear direction on how the path workflow should be. But you really do have to start paying attention to the UX experience. So even with ggedit, I thought it was laid out quite nicely with the tab interface and going to the different options. So certainly, whether you realize it or not, you're already thinking of those things at that time. So certainly, that's been helpful. As anybody out there that's learning Shiny for the first time, getting the UX right can mean so much, even though it may not be something you think about right away, for sure.
Yeah, I think that was probably the first project where I took a pencil and paper and drew
Yep.
the app.
The wireframes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I drew the app, and after about 30 drawings, I got to roughly where the app was.
Yeah, well, believe me, I've had a lot of scrap paper. One of my bigger apps at the company, and when I thought I had the idea and I start coding, I'm like, nope, toss it away, try
Yep,
again.
yep,
Very
definitely.
cool. So as we kind of alluded to earlier on, you and I both have been working in kind of a similar industry, life sciences, for a few years now. It'd be interesting to hear from kind of a practitioner perspective, maybe how Shiny was able to bring a lot of value and maybe a project that you worked on. You don't have to get into specifics, but I know for me, I've been able to in essence save the company maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes just by going from a proprietary product to a product built with Shiny and obviously using open source. I'm just curious if you have similar examples and your projects are able to bring a lot of value to your customers with something that was built with Shiny.
So the company that I worked for, Metrum Research Group, so they adopted Shiny early on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there was no proprietary software to mimic there.
Sure.
Um, but the main, because it was a CRO and consulting, it's a consulting company. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Shiny use was how do we communicate compl relatively complex models that and simulations to the clients. and highlight in the Shiny apps the endpoints that they're interested in,
Mm-hmm.
and try and hone in not on the technical sides, but on the decision making points
Right.
that they have, and try and steer a conversation around that. And the good thing that Shiny adds was that you can kind of, instead of having a static document that or an R Markdown document, with Shiny you can kind of iterate across questions that a client may have,
Mm-hmm.
and then the conversation can continue a lot smoother, and you can further interrogate based on your current conversation, not say I'll get back to you in a week, like that.
Right.
So that's the main leverage of Shiny with the stuff that we did.
Yeah, that's a very similar thing that I experienced where before they would give me a question I had to answer. I had to go back to my desk, crunch out the R code, get the, well, maybe a TFL, dreaded word, or some kind of work product back, meet with them again, and be like, oh, that's interesting. Now try this. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh boy. And so I remember just being able to minimize just meetings with the app. I can pull right on the projector screen, just say, okay, this is what we talked about last time. Here's the impact of it. You want me to change like this slider to move this value over here? And I'm like, yeah, try that. And then that way it's all done. So it's I think a lot of people that may be new to Shiny may not realize initially, it's not just for end users like the or the customers of the app. It's also for yourself too. It can really enhance your productivity. Obviously, you've kind of experienced that with what you did with ggedit as well. That was enhancing your
yeah,
ability to customize plots and not just the users of your app. So it's one of those things I didn't really appreciate when I first started. So I'm hearing your examples from somebody in the industry like me. It's great to hear others feel that similar
yeah,
way.
and also internally, there was a lot of times where we would run long running simulations, like days at a time, and especially if you're working with stuff like SunGrid Engine.
I deal with that as I speak. Yes.
Yep, yep, it's a beast.
Yes.
So you can't really, once you send off a job, as in any cloud, you don't really know where it's at while it's running. So I'm not great with unknown and waiting. So we created an app that would basically read in um, real-time information from the grid engine, and then you can track where job is at in
Yep.
real time, and also stop a job if like you're trying to optimize something and it diverges in the middle. Then you can stop the SunGrid from working at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to, and especially in non-mem where you can actually track the how it's optimizing the model that you're doing, so you can actually see the likelihood and the parameter estimates and everything.
Right.
So especially with if you're using Shiny Server, you can send off a job and then look at your phone with the app and see, okay, my model's running okay, and then
Yeah.
you're fine. Or if you need within the app, you can just kill the job from the app itself. So it kind of releases you from the unknown, and
Yes.
and empowers you kind of to also do other things at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, I'm commiserating because I've literally built three apps that have dealt with SunGrid Engine in one way, shape, or form. And being able to have the ability to monitor that in real time. I don't know the techniques you use, but I use the combination of like a reactive that would invalidate later and kind of reactively pull like QStat output or other things like that, or logs that maybe the job was creating. And in that way, the user can even get a makeshift progress bar sometimes. They'll be like, okay, I'm at this simulation. We have like 100 more to complete. And it gives them something that something's happening. The worst thing is when you do these things, if
Yeah,
you don't take that time to think about how do I inform the user of what's happening, they're just going to think you broke the app or your app is broken if they
Yep.
think there's just nothing happening. So that took me a long time to nail down. Now, I'm not saying
Yeah.
I have it perfect yet, but
Yeah.
certainly I've learned a lot about how to interact with these systems. And that was, yeah, being able to wrap some kind of simulation pipeline with Shiny was kind of like a game changer for me, where then I could let others that maybe don't know the ins and outs of best practices of high performance computing and their R code. They just look at my app, it streamlines all that for them. It's not going to take the shortcuts that they shouldn't take, and it's not going to overwhelm the system. I can put checks in to make sure they're not going to launch like 100,000 jobs by accident or something like that.
Yep.
So that's really interesting. You've been on that side of the world too. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, those are you. Go ahead. Yeah, finish up. Yeah.
And yeah, we also used well, this is kind of niche non-mem, but you're um, being able to use Shiny and the what is it called, the editor in Shiny. Forget
Mm-hmm.
its name. Um, so you can use it as a lint kind of mechanism.
Oh, neat.
So if you want to kind of get people to work in a standard way where that that language is not built for standardization at all.
Definitely not. Yeah.
So you can, so in order to get people to kind of work in a templated way, we built an app that they would put in their control stream, and
Mm-hmm.
then it would first it would restructure it a bit in order to space it out, like doing what is it called, the R package that does the right spacings for you.
Oh, there's like Linter and other ones. Yeah, in that space. Yeah.
Yep, yep. So kind of mimicking that, but for non-mem,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can, and then for me it was important because I I didn't want to start to change all of how their control streams are set up, but
Okay.
that would do it for me automatically, and then I could help them because we would be talking the same language at that point.
Yeah, yeah, that's really exciting. And I know I've seen some of my colleagues try something similar with even defining Bayesian model syntax and letting the user put that into this editor box in the app, and then that can get translated into like the Bayesian models maybe running in the JAG sampler, for example, or
Yep,
things like that. So there's lots of cool things you can do. But of course, anytime you let the user input free text that's supposed to be interpreted as code, you've definitely got to be careful. There's some bookkeeping to do there
yep,
too. So
yep.
that's very cool. So to me, this is really enlightening to see, the ways that Shiny's been helpful to you and your projects. And I'll venture to say that here in 2020, getting started with Shiny, or even taking that next step to going from like beginner to quote intermediate, however you want to call that next progression, is one of the best times, because on top of being able to talk with awesome people like you, we've got new resources out there of like building Shiny production apps on multiple levels. But I'm just curious, if you were talking to yourself in 2020 that was just starting with Shiny, what advice would you give them to, like, pointers and gotchas maybe they should avoid, how they get started effectively with it to take it to that kind of building a quote production product level?
Well, first know that you're gonna have some growing pains, and be
Yes.
ready for that. Be fully
Yes.
ready for growing pains. But getting used to reactivity and understanding um, the right mechanisms for controlling an app, because it's easy to start off and reading, okay, there's a react and a observe pieces of a Shiny app, and that's basically it with the UI above that. But there's better ways to control cascading reactivity, I
Mm-hmm.
think, and that's something that if I knew that before when I started about cascading reactivity,
Yeah.
I would have suffered a lot less. Um, yeah. So, but also don't be afraid to ask questions to online. and GitHub and look at as many apps as you can.
Yes.
And also try and find um, even silly little questions or problems that you may have that you can try and code up as an app. Because if you have a goal in mind when creating an app, I think you get into new territories,
Right.
and you have to create new solutions. So
Hmm.
if you're creating the same app or same basic structure over and over and over again, you're not going to grow yourself as an app developer.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good point. I would fall on old habits before, and now I've kind of taken this leap ever since I talked with Colin Fay a year ago about what work they were doing with production apps, and now the Golan package. That's my new workflow now, and just using that alone has taught me different things that I either took for granted before, or I just simply didn't know about. So certainly challenging yourself a little bit, not always falling back on the same routines if you can maybe optimize it a bit better so that it's not just for you to maintain it better, but the ideal case for me is if I'm building a large app, I have a team working with me. It's not
Yep.
always that case. Sometimes I am the sole developer of it, but certainly giving other developers a best chance to get on board with it and structuring it in such a way to make that easier will
Yep.
benefit everybody in the long run. So
Yeah.
certainly good
Colin
advice
Colin
there.
has done a great job with Golem.
Yep.
The and getting people to think in a more production way is an important piece of that. Um,
Yeah.
Actually, I've done some collaboration with Colin on a different part of Shiny.
Oh,
I
okay.
think is interesting is um, create trying to understand how you can test for cascading reactivity. So we worked on a package. Now that name is being taken by someone else. uh, Reactor,
Oh, neat.
where I just watched the HBO show Chernobyl when I was writing the app.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Yeah. No, that's an interesting way to do it.
so the name Reactor came. Um, so the idea was how can you create unit testing that will track the reactivity of your app.
Oh, cool.
And then the main motivation was if I'm working with you on an app and you're pushing an update, I want a continuous integration in the background to test that you didn't change the reactivity that was there, or that kind of thing can be planned ahead now.
Oh,
So
neat.
so you can set expectations for how much reactivity you have.
Very cool. Oh, well, I'll have to put a link in the show notes of this one. This is news to me.
And the back end of that was a package I worked with Colin on, and Kirill was called Where Am I? Where the original idea of Where Am I, you'll appreciate this, is when you have tables, lists, and figures, you have to have a footnote
Oh, yeah.
of the source and where the figure is stored.
Right.
So I got sick of writing that down manually or doing it ad hoc. So I created what became a package, and then that was you put in a function called Where Am I,
Mm-hmm.
and it will always understand where the source code was run, and then it will put it in the footnote for you.
Oh, cool.
So that way you don't really need to know where it's running from. The package itself will know it for you. So um, even if you run a function that its original source was somewhere else, it'll understand where the actual plot was made and not where the function was run. So that's kind of cool. So that Colin saw that, and he kind of expanded on it and said we can use it for Shiny just the same way. And
Very
then
neat.
so then instead of putting it on a plot, you put it in your Shiny app. And then every time a reactivity trips that line, it it writes out the time, the log, basically to a log file. It writes out to a log file inside the package
Mm-hmm.
of the line in the app that it was triggered.
Wow. Yeah, we'll
And,
definitely be checking this out. This sounds
and then
really
it
cool.
creates a counter for you. So it counts how many times the line was tripped while the app is running.
Yeah, this kind of stuff, I know that a lot of the people I work with struggle with, tracing the reactivity patterns and tracing where certain pieces of the app are being hit. And maybe something's being hit too much or something's not being hit at all. And you're trying to figure out why not. So having this kind of tracing ability and the ability to dive deeper into it, I think is a really helpful feature to have. So certainly this
Yep.
is something I'll be checking out after this for sure. Nice. So yeah, this has been really awesome to talk shop about Shiny with you. What kind of things are you working on now in terms of like maybe your open source projects or things you want to learn about in the future? You could comment on that, but
Yeah. Um, a lot of it is on how to create unit tests for reactivity.
yep.
Um, but a different part of it is trying to. We worked with Slack in the company, so
Hmm.
um, getting packages that are a bit more flexible than Slack R
Oh, okay.
was. Um, I worked a lot with Bob Rudis on Slack R, and at some point
Hmm.
we decided that Slack R wasn't flexible enough. So now created a kind of universe of Slack packages where you can use the API in different areas. So you can even do a reprex in Slack now.
Oh, cool.
So it will create for you the right output in order to upload it to Slack, and then you can make interaction in Slack more efficient.
Hmm.
Um, just like in like GitHub issues or in Stack Overflow, now you can do it in Slack. So um, I worked with John Harmon from
Oh, yeah.
R4DS.
Yeah, yeah.
So he actually wrote an app
Neat.
on top of that Slack verse, and he created a dashboard for for data science using that
Cool.
infrastructure. So hopefully that'll make life for him a bit easier.
Yeah, yeah. I met him at RCO Conf last year or earlier this year. Yeah, we were able to talk shiny stuff there too. That's cool. Nice. So certainly, Yanni, this has been really awesome to chat with you. If others want to follow along what you've been working on or catch up with you on maybe say social media, where are the best places they can get a hold of you?
So on Twitter, you can find me at Yoni Sidi with Ceedee.
Hmm.
Um, my handle, and on GitHub it's just Yoni Sidi with a C and a D. All
Cool.
my packages are there.
Nice. And I must say, you're one of my more entertaining people I follow on Twitter. You always give me a laugh in one way, shape, or form. And you always throw these awesome nuggets in there too. And I'm like, oh, he learned that? How did I miss that? So yeah, definitely follow Yanni if you're not following him already. Cool. Well, again, Yanni, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure we'll be crossing paths again. And so you're welcome back on the Shiny Dev Series anytime you want to talk again.
Thank you. Thanks.
Great, great. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll be back right after this. All right. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Yanni. He had so much interesting tidbits to share, tales from the trenches, you might say, just like me, where I've learned a lot about my skills of Shiny have been enhanced by trying to solve problems in the industry I work with, and he's definitely experienced similar flows as me. But it was fascinating to hear some of his background, and I'm really interested in see how he progresses some of his new packages, especially the to be renamed reactor package for understanding reactivity patterns. So, if you want to see past episodes of the Shiny Developer Series, the easiest place to go is to our site, shinydevseries.com. You'll see every video posted there, which directly links to our YouTube channel. So certainly if you like what you're seeing and you want to see more, definitely hit that subscribe button and you'll be notified about those updates automatically. And check out shinydevseries.com with this episode's post, where you'll see all the links to what Yanni and I talked about today. So we got more great interviews lined up for the future, and I dare say I'm going to get my hand going a little bit with trying some interactive coding on my own and show you some of the skills that I've been learning along the way with developing intermediate and sometimes quite complex Shiny apps. And we're going to have fun learning about that together. So that will conclude this episode of Shiny Developer Series. So we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.